Before Balt, who is a dog I currently share my life with, I had two other dogs, Brin and Benny. And I have to say that my relationship with each of them is different because I am changing, growing as a person, as a caregiver. Brin was basically the family dog. I was in my early teens when we got him. I'm not too ashamed to admit that there was a time that the relationship with him was very superficial. I never asked myself what were his wants, what were his needs. Don't get me wrong, I love that dog to bits, but when I think on that relationship now, it pains me to say that my love was conditional in some sense because every time he did something I didn't particularly like, I was very offended by his behavior. Like, why can't you obey? Why are you being so stubborn? Why are you messing with me? So it was definitely a journey to come to this point that I am at now. I'd say everything was put into motion when I adopted Benny. He was what would be described as a dog reactive dog, and I really wanted to understand his behavior better. And this was the first time that I wanted to understand why my dog was behaving a certain way, what was happening behind the behavior. And it pains me to this day that neither Brin nor Benny got the chance to experience this version of me, and that we didn't get to have the kind of relationship that I have now with Balt. But we are all doing our best, the best we know how at this moment. And making mistakes is something we will be doing for the rest of our lives. We can learn a lot from the mistakes we may make, but we shouldn't obsess over them and let them paralyze us. So my mantra is I am doing my best, and making mistakes is human and a great learning opportunity. And this really helps me to stop beating myself up for every little mistake I make along this journey. Almost at the same time that I adopted Balt, I came across Sindor Pangal and Barks, where I eventually got my certificate from for a dog behavior consultant. And I felt I finally found the answers to my questions. It really opened my eyes to the fact that dogs are individuals, that they have their own wants and needs. And two main things I learned at Barks played a huge part in my perspective shift that led to me using the phrase thank you with Balt. The first one is the Barks motto, learn to learn from dogs. And the second is that every behavior has a reason. And at the first glance, they might not seem related to using the phrase thank you, but they were a very important foundation for me to start using that phrase, because this really made me more humble. It made me take a step back and let the dogs show me the answer instead of me forcing what I think the right answer should be. And I think saying thank you evolved naturally from that. For me, saying thank you acknowledges the other individual, their agency in the relationship. It shows my respect and also gives room for compromises. And I think every relationship, but I'm focusing here on the dog human relationship, has to have compromises, especially from the human side, because every aspect of our dog's life is under complete control of us humans. And so if we want to have a healthy, strong, loving, safe relationship with our dog, we have to be prepared to make compromises. One of many examples where I use thank you with Balt is, so Balt is an ex-hunting dog and he was trained to hunt. And when we are in the forest, it sometimes still happens that he wants to chase after a forest animal. And because that is a hard boundary for me, that we don't chase other animals, I communicate that to Balt with my body language in a sense of, sorry, you cannot chase after them. And every time Balt acknowledges what I'm asking of him, I say thank you. And my thank you represents two things for me. I know that Bald doesn't understand the meaning of the phrase thank you, but we do know that dogs are extremely good at reading and responding to our emotions and sensing them in our words. So I know why, while Bald doesn't understand the word itself, he does understand the meaning it carries. He understands the gratitude behind it, because I am asking a huge thing from him, and a thing that is very important to him and that he would much rather do than to walk away from. And the fact that he chose what I asked him to do rather than what he would have preferred to do means a lot to me. And I want Balt to realize how much that means to me. And second, saying thank you acts like a reminder for me that it is not taken for granted that the Balt will do as I say, because he's not under my command. We are coexisting. And I firmly believe that every one of us has the right to say no or to have their voice heard. I know some people are reluctant to the idea of giving dogs the freedom of choice because, I don't know, they may be afraid that all hell will break loose, that the dogs will go completely crazy, make stupid decisions. But in my experience, the exact opposite happens, because having the freedom of choice is necessary for an individual's well being. So I see thank you as a representation of how deep our relationships can be. It communicates gratitude, respect, humility, it builds connection. And these words are not something we usually see in relation to dog human relationships in the mainstream. I see it as stepping away from commands, cues, whatever you want to call it, and moving towards, or rather back to, communication, because of how good dogs are at reading us, responding to our body language, regardless of where we come from, of where the dog comes from. I would not be surprised if communication or something like that is at the core of our coevolution instead of commands. So saying thank you for me is going back to that partnership, to the core of our coevolution. I think a lot of us, myself included, have or had some kind of superiority or savior complex, in the sense, if I don't tell you what to do, how to do it, your behavior will never change. And there was a time where I saw my dog's behavior as these moral choices of being good or bad. And I believed that I was the one that had to show them how to be good. Otherwise, they would be lost. Saying this now makes me cringe. I know, we know that behavior is such a complex mix of things like health, lifestyle, history, genetics, and so on. And when the dog is behaving badly, there is always a reason for that. And that reason isn't because the dog is bad, because they want to give us hard time, because they are jealous. If we can't look past the I know what is the best for you and what that looks like, without taking a step back and observing the dog in front of us, learning who dogs are as a species, acknowledging that we will never have all the answers, we can do more harm than good to our dog, our relationship, and at the end of the day, also ourselves, because constantly managing every step our dog takes is exhausting. We all flourish if we cooperate. As I mentioned, saying thank you carries respect, humility, gratitude, connection, which all put our superiority under, I think, rightly deserved question. With it, we push the dynamic towards partnership, which is more aligned with how dogs naturally learn and bond. And that automatically changes how we see a dog's behavior. When we try to understand the behavior, we start asking ourselves why it's happening. It shifts the goal from stopping the behavior to listening to the behavior. The mindset of what is this behavior telling me, or what need, emotion, or trigger is underneath it, opens the door to compassionate, informed solutions, long-term change based on trust and addressing the dog's needs and not just symptoms. And the mindset behind trying to understand a behavior and saying thank you is the same. They are connected. It is very hard to get in the habit of understanding someone if you don't respect them, if you don't have a connection or trying to build a connection with them, if you're not humble and think you know everything. Saying thank you helps us pause. And that pause lets us listen. And that listening creates space for compassion, learning, and real change. Saying thank you to our dogs changes us. It turns everyday moments into moments of connection because when we say thank you, we are saying, I see you, I value you, I am grateful we are in this life together. And I think that's the real power, that a simple shift in how we speak and see our dogs can open up a completely different kind of relationship, one built on trust, respect, and shared understanding.